Hello, friends. Welcome to Monday. If you are joining us on the live, hello. Lovely to see you. If you are watching on the playback, hello. Thank you for watching on the playback. Let's say some hellos. Hello, Shanann. I'm sorry you've had a day already, and I'm happy Monday to you too. And I am glad that you are here. Elaine also says happy Monday and informs us that it is World Donkey Day. So happy World Donkey Day. I was not aware. Hello, Alberta and Jessie. Welcome, welcome. Hello, an Iron Butterfly from sunny Arizona. I apologise. It's been a bit rainy here in London, although I did manage to miss the worst of it. Hello, Intrepid Frady Cat. Hello. Oh, I've had a big jump there. Welcome, friends. Hello, Liz. Yes, well, hopefully Monday is going to be a happy one. We will have a nice history chat. And I am just going to hop in and say, if I am a bit tired, or if I come across as being a bit tired, there's a reason for that. It's because I am. And that is because today I have been at Hampton Court doing if anybody follows me on TikTok or saw my little short here on YouTube, I have been queening it at Hampton Court. So I have been being Queen Anne today. So I'm a little tired from that, but ready to have a cup of tea and chat the history news. Also, another thing that's adding things, Jessie, did I have fun for the coronation? Did I toast Charlie with a cuppa? To be honest, I have had a rough weekend because on Thursday I was doing some teaching and I suddenly felt peculiar. I was immediately flop sweat and thought, I'm not well. I'm not well. And then by the evening, it was very clear that I was not well. And so from Thursday evening through to very late yesterday on Sunday, I would say that I underwent what I'm calling, for positivity's sake, a surprise cleanse. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. But apparently my body was going to do it. So I have felt rough. And it was, to be honest, it became quite difficult to sit down. It was quite painful. So on the plus side, though, it seems to have done wonders for my skin. So we will see what's going on. I am feeling fine now. It's just been yes, 3 a.m. To be honest, I did see the coronation. I was watching it in bed, feeling very sorry for myself, and frankly terrified about every bubble that was happening in my belly. But I did have a good time watching the coronation. I remember very little of it because it may have been a fever dream. I don't know. But here we are. And we do have lots of history news to get through today because it's been a fortnight. And it's also going to be another fortnight before we have the next one because I am not about next Monday. So we have got so much to cover. And I've had lots of lovely people sending me news articles. So we're going to jump in first of all with the thank yous. Then we're going to hop into the updates. We're going to do the repatriations and decolonisation news. We're going to do the new news. Then we do have some ding dongs. And then finally, we have a few events and exhibitions to have a quick look at. We have so much to go through. I flag it up every week, but here's what's happening. All of the links are in the description box. They are numbered. You will notice that on the bottom of the slides that I'm going to put up, those numbers will correlate to the numbers that are appearing in the description box. Additionally, I have an opera pin board with all of the links in it, so you can see that too. And that is also linked in my description box. I'm just going to have a quick look at the... Brian, I am playing Anne of Denmark, who is, for those who don't know, who is the wife of James I of England and VI of Scots. So the mother of Charles I. So I'm having quite a lot of fun talking about that. It's been quite fun talking about a coronation of a Charles and pointing out, oh, I've got a Charles. He's going to be king next. So we meet her, my Anne. You could, if you are at Hampton Court, you will meet her in 1616. So sadly, just after the death of, not long after the death of her son, Prince Henry, who of course would have been the heir to the throne. But the point is that we are celebrating the 400 years of the First Folio. So what you're also doing is you're going to meet members of Shakespeare's company in the year of his death. So we are looking forward to them producing the First Folio. So there's conversations about whether or not they should. And 1616 also works because that's when Ben Jonson puts out his First Folio of his work. So there we go. Let's hop in then. Let's start with the thank yous. I would like to thank Yvonne, Kathryn, Mary, another cat, name twin, Sheri, Jessie, Anne. I'm just going to hide myself ever so if I can. Felem, Joseph, Beccy, Joe, Elizabeth, Karolyn, Mrs. Pretty's housemaid, Terra, Samantha, Crazy Artist Lady, and Sarah. Thank you all so much for taking the time to send me news items. It really does mean a lot that you see these things and they remind you of me, presumably, and then you take the time to send them over. I am very grateful. Currently, I am seeing most people, I believe, are sending me links through either email, which is readingthePast@gmail.com, or they are sending them over Twitter by tagging me in Twitter. The DM functions on both Instagram and Twitter, because of things like some stuff gets hidden and it goes in different places. If you're going to send things to me on Twitter, I'd love it if you just tag me in the comments. If you want to send things more privately, please email them to me. That would be amazing. I think at some point I probably should just set up a dedicated email for this so that there's just the one place to send stuff to. Righty-ho. Let's get straight in with our first and actually only update, and then we're going to hop straight into repatriations and decolonisation. So this is an update that connects to actually the ding-dong from last time about the little Eros statue. These are the other finds that connect to that excavation, to that dig. Excavations in an ancient Greek temple have turned up a wealth of terracotta figurines, including a fun one of a love god riding a dolphin. We've already spoken about that. But there are other finds, including 7 bull's heads and a dolphin statuette. This is excavations in the province of Salerno, and these are which is in southern Italy. We have some amazing pictures here. So the first set of pictures are a group of 3 seemingly matching statuettes of Eros riding a dolphin. Then in the middle, we have fragments of the 4th temple. And then we've also got a votive lion. The excavation at this site, we're told, began in the 1950s. But the archaeologists are confident that discoveries made at the 4th temple will change understanding of the city. So presumably we will still have more studies and more work coming out of these digs and presumably further digs as well. Brilliant. Let's hop into our repatriation / decolonisation, and many of these are also updates for us. Greece looks to Vienna for a new boost on the Parthenon sculptures. Museums in Austria and Greece are discussing the potential return to Athens of 2 ancient Greek sculptures, a move which could have a knock-on effect for the world's thorniest cultural heritage dispute, the fate of the British Museum's Parthenon sculptures. The talks announced by Austria's foreign minister on Tuesday concerned 2 small pieces of the 2,500-year-old marble works from the Acropolis. The sculptures are now held in Vienna's Kunsthistorisches Museum. If a deal for their return is struck, it will be Greece's 3rd in a few months, with a handful of European museums that own the little bit of the Parthenon sculptures. So obviously the British Museum does have some fairly sizable chunks of the Parthenon sculptures. So this kind of conversation, the more different institutions get involved and start handing things back, I think it's very valid to say that the pressure is going to increase, and they certainly say this. This could increase pressure on the British Museum to return its own much larger collection. Austrian Foreign Minister Alexander Schallenberg discussed the issue with his visiting Greek counterpart Nikos Dendias in Vienna. Schallenberg said that, quote, technical talks are currently underway, and this is between their museum and the Acropolis Museum, and it's about the possibility of a loan. Sounding optimistic, Dendias voiced deep satisfaction at the development. Dendias said after meeting Schallenberg, quote, this will add to a series of highly symbolic gestures that may create a positive momentum. In January, the Vatican Museum made a donation from Pope Francis. So Vienna's, we're being told, will be the third one. And for us, it's of huge importance. I suppose we have to see. I think it's very I think this is the element that the more institutions that are reached out to, and Greece went to the British Museum, I think, fairly early on. Understandably, as the chunks are so large, I think that Greece said, look, do the right thing. And the British Museum has resolutely not engaged. So now there is a shortcut round the long way. And it is impossible that this is not creating pressure. It's impossible. It must be getting very, very uncomfortable. Jennifer, apologies. Yes, I should have made it clear about the Instagram and various things not being particularly reliable. I have hold out for the ding dong because we have got an update on that actually. This I thought was really interesting, and it's certainly not something that I would ever claim to be able to speak to. So if this, it seems like it sounds very sensitively handled. It certainly sounds like the communities on this campus are happy with what's happening, but I'm not going to say this is the right thing to do because this is so far out of my wheelhouse of cultural understanding that it would be grossly irresponsible for me to do so. Jennifer, I realise now you've typed that what I said. Look, I'm going to backtrack. You do with whatever. Hold out for the right ding dong is what I'm going to say, and let that let that ding dong be your guide. What? Wow. Let's. Whew. Cleansing ceremonies have been planned at 3 buildings on this particular campus: Wilson, Carpenter, and Silsby. These are all campus buildings that once housed Native American remains. This is in relation and an update on the situation at Dartmouth. A Native American medicine man has been invited to conduct a series of ceremonies to spiritually cleanse these Dartmouth facilities. Quote, the discovery of previously unaccounted for ancestral remains on campus was shocking and painful, especially for the Native American and Indigenous community on campus and beyond. These ceremonies are a way to help the healing process begin. This is one of the many steps Dartmouth is taking to be accountable and to ensure that our campus is a welcoming place for all. In March, President Philip J. Hanlon, who I believe is class of 77, apologised on behalf of the institution for Dartmouth's possession of the ancestral remains and for the pain the discovery has caused to the Native community. On Friday, April 28th, Wilson and Carpenter halls will be closed to faculty, students and staff who are not directly involved in the ceremony. On Saturday, April 29th, Silsby Hall, including the Rockefeller Centre, will likewise be closed. So, as I said, this is so far out of my wheelhouse of understanding in terms of culturally what this means, but I feel like from the reading I've done around it and the quotes I saw from students from the affected community, this seems to be a better case scenario in terms of institutional response. So interesting to follow along. Meanwhile, in news that I think will probably surprise absolutely no one, it certainly did not surprise me, a report finds major provenance holes in the Met's Museum's Native American art collection. I think major provenance holes in the Met Museum's collection, major provenance holes in the British Museum's collection. This seems to be a running theme, but nevertheless, about 85% of native art objects, I'm going to say gifted to the museum by they was gifted by them, Charles and Valerie Dicker, lack established ownership histories. Excellent. This is once again an article that's based upon a ProPublica investigation. I've talked about ProPublica. I came across them because of doing these news items. People sent me ProPublica articles, and I have absolute respect for the journalism that's involved. It's absolutely phenomenal. So these people that have investigated this. They passed through the online records of 139 Dicker gifts, which makes me laugh in my brain because I'm a child, to discover that the vast majority had underdeveloped historical records. That's a very underdeveloped historical records. A sign that those works may be stolen or fake. Indeedly doodly. The report also alleges that the Met did not tell Native communities about the new gifts in a timely fashion. Under the 1990 Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which I believe is NAGPRA, federally funded museums have 6 months to notify and consult tribes when they acquire sacred or free objects. So presumably this did not happen in a timely fashion. The investigation highlights one such object, a quiver and arrow set displayed at the Met in 2019. The museum lists the object's culture as Apache. The report alleges this characterization shows a lack of due diligence in consulting with Native communities. Quote, if Met curators had contacted any of those tribes, they might have learned which group created these items. Yep. NAGPRA representative Ramon Riley of Arizona's White Mountain Apache tribe stated he believes the arrows are a funerary object which would require them to be reported and presumably repatriated. ProPublica also details the history surrounding the quivers, which were excluded from the object's museum label. It explains the brutality of the US Army General William Sherman, I don't know how to pronounce that middle name, William Sherman's military campaign against the Apache people in the 1870s. It also talks about the Smithsonian request that Sherman delivers specimens to the institution. These objects were then distributed to other museums. The Met has since removed the object from view, citing cultural sensitivity. We've got a picture as well here of this. It's an Atlique mask, if I pronounce that wrong, a Lutique mask from around the 1870s. The history of this lists only the whereabouts of the object before 2003 as, quote, the Horner family, Mill Valley. I don't think that's where it comes from, babe, is it, though? These objects were pillaged in the 1800s, and this is apparently a well-documented fact. And it can apparently be traced through 2008 when the Dickers purchased the mask. The theft of these objects is tied to a century of massacre, abuse, and cultural erasure. The Met's object description does not mention this, instead explaining the artwork's spiritual significance. A spokesperson for the Met, writing to Hyperallergic, explains, quote, the exceptional works by Native American Indigenous artists included in the Dicker collection have helped transform the Met's conventional narratives of American art and culture and encourage more inclusion and celebration of creative expressions from communities whose voices and artistic practices have long been marginalized and ignored. Babe, if you showing them is not enough, if you are mislabeling them, leaving out half the history, and essentially washing the blood off. Marianne, yes, I was referring to Sherman's middle name. I don't know how to say that word. I've heard the name William Sherman. I don't know how to pronounce what that is. I don't know how that says. So yes, if this is one of the things when um, it is pronounced Tecumseh. Tecumseh. Well, how can we know the actual history of an object and its peoples if the history of the item is not recorded and kept? Well, the thing is, they're saying that there is a record and a keeping of the history. I think the issue is that in a lot of it, it's that history is kept within the community that the object was stolen from. And the problem is that out of context, if these institutions were, for example, working on loans from various communities, if they were working and not concerned potentially about the need to repatriate, if they, for example, went to the individual who we were talking about, if we were talking about Ramon Riley, the Arizona White Mountain Apache tribal individual, who was talking about this as a funerary object, these conversations, these labels could be completely correct and up to date. So doing that would mean that these objects get a fuller history. Saying that the object before 2003 was at the Horner Valley, Mill Valley, there's clearly a history before that, and it's just very peculiar that they have chosen to ignore it. Our goal is to continue to work collaboratively and in support of Native American and Indigenous communities while foregrounding their perspectives relevant to the collections currently in our care. We are proud of the progress we have made and recognise there is still much work to do. The Met is dedicated to continuous work that NAGPRA requires, most importantly, strengthening relationship with source communities, hosting consultations and community visits, reviewing and supporting potential repatriations, and developing opportunities for collaborative partnerships. I think that in all the way into the early noughties, there was just absolutely no cultural will or appetite in lots of these institutions to consider that there was going to be a reckoning. And I think that what's happening now is that the birds are coming home to the hens are coming home to roost. And this is me being at my kindest, is that now the people who are in charge of these collections are being left with, or have been left with, a legacy of other people's cover up, or more, perhaps more properly, of other people's lack of care and diligence in terms of these histories, because it was never considered that these chickens would come home to roost, and now they are. And places like the Met, places like the British Museum, what we see on the top of the iceberg of their collection on display is literally the tippy top of the iceberg. They have warehouses, they have basements full of stuff, and this is going to be a scramble. There and a massive thing is, I think, in terms of the permeability of the heritage sector, and it's getting better, but it's slow going. The permeability of the heritage sector at curatorial level and above for people who don't have lots of family money, who don't look like people who work in galleries selling art. There is work to be done in terms of making that space, those jobs available for far too much curatorial positions come off the back of working for free too much. And thus we come to a position where people whose voices would be really useful in this discussion are shut out. Charles and Valerie Dicker have also spoken to ProPublica. They said that they had assessed, quote, all available information regarding to provenance for nearly 50 years. Inspiring appreciation for the art of Native America has been our greatest passion. Apparently, Hyperallergic has been unable to reach the Dickers for comment. I don't necessarily think that people are it's sometimes when you read this stuff, it's hard not to think of them as kind of moustache twirling bad guys. I think that appreciation and believing that you appreciate something has been used as an excuse for really very bad behavior. The Edwardian Egyptologists believed in with their Fortnum Mason packages, believed they appreciated Tutankhamun while they desecrated his tomb. So, continuing on. 55 Hindu relics stolen from temples across India have been located at the home of an art collector in Chennai. This art collector was also found to be in possession of illegally smuggled antiquities last year. There is a specialist unit within the Tamil Nadu Police Department called the Idol Wing, which sounds like the best title for a TV show ever. I loves it. So the Idol Wing is the department that's tasked with recovering looted artifacts. Great name. And they have recovered 55 Hindu idols. These are 300-year-old sacred objects that are thought to date back to the 9th or 10th century CE. That's not how maths works. The 300-year-old sacred objects are believed to date back to the 9th or 10th century CE. I'm going to see if I can find that in another article to see which dates are correct. These were traced by authorities to a home in the city of Chennai belonging to the collector Soba Dejururan, who has already been the source of several other recovered antiquities. Quote, on Wednesday, we received a tip-off following which a special team conducted searches at the house. Was the tip-off? We were there last year. And there's a shed load of other stuff next in the next door room. Was that the tip-off? Because holy mackerel, that is like an episode of Hoarders. And I just think to myself as well, it's the same thing with people putting things in private collection. You know, looting stuff is reprehensible, but also there is where is the care for any of these objects just randomly stacked up against each other? At the end of last year, the Idol Wing recovered another 7 missing idols at the home after she had unwittingly registered 6 other relics on the Archaeological Survey of India, arousing suspicion. She claimed to have acquired her idols from the late accused smuggler Dina Dayalayan via his Aparna art gallery between 2008 and 2015, but she only proved receipts of this in 4 cases. The ASI works to reunite these precious artifacts with their temples of origins, and the authorities plan to clarify the exact involvement in their illegal looting of both Dendayan and Dejuran, who is currently residing in the US but will return to Chennai in September. The police chief told reporters, quote, we will investigate who was involved in the theft and nab them. According to Babu, 1,541 bronze and stone antique idols have been recovered by the Idol Wing since its inception. They are being kept at 19 designated icon centres. So hopefully at some point as well, they will go on display before hopefully going back to perform their religious purposes. Because that's the thing, is that it would be lovely to see them all together, but ultimately they need to go back to doing what they need to be doing. So the Gospel of Mary was held in a New York safe deposit for years and suffered major degradation. I mean, I haven't heard about that one, but there are the things that exist in rich people's houses that are not even arguably, are evidentiarily, that might be a word, treasures or things of real historical significance that if they were buildings would be fully protected They would be grade 1 listed. We are talking really old books, really old paintings, really old fabrics, the sort of things that are just dreams to have. That if you there is absolutely no oversight about these things being kept in the proper place, in the proper climate control, wherever, whatever might be required. There's just no requirements to make sure that these things aren't being allowed to be moth eaten or set on fire or whatever else. A museum, not as we've seen from the repatriation, not that they are perfect. A museum has responsibilities. Nigeria has transferred ownership of Benin bronzes to the royal ruler, confusing European museums' plans to return the artifacts. The Benin bronzes restitution saga, we are told, has taken a new turn after the Nigerian government has officially recognised the Oba of Benin, which is the king of Benin, as the owner and custodian of the artifacts that were looted in the late 19th century. The Oba had said that they did naturally belong to him. It appears that the Nigerian government is agreeing. The announcement came in the form of a presidential declaration. This official notice, entitled Notice of Presidential Declaration on the Recognition of Ownership and an Order Vesting Custody and Management of Repatriated Looted Benin Artifacts in the Oba of Benin, was issued on the 23rd of March. According to the proposed law, all artifacts must be delivered to the Oba of Benin, who exercises the rights of the original owner. This covers the ones already repatriated and those yet to be repatriated. Barnaby Phillips, the author of Loot, Britain and the Benin Bronzes, tells the art newspaper, quote, "For many Edo people, it is right and proper that such objects go back to the Oba, as they were looted from his great-great-grandfather. It has, however, caused confusion amongst many European museums who are negotiating deals with Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments, the NCMM. And they are now asking, who is our partners? It's blindsided the NCMM." Okay. We are reminded that the Benin bronze has become a touchstone to test European museums' readiness to restitute heritage. This latest development apparently complicates matters for Western institutions. Crucially, Godwin Obasaki, local Edo state governor, has backed the Edo Museum of West African Art to house the Benin bronzes, which is due to open in stages from 2024. The Edo Museum is overseen by the Mwa Trust, a Nigerian non-profit organisation. We reported earlier this month that the prospect of hundreds of looted treasures returning to Nigeria has given an impetus to an array of museum construction plans. The museum had not responded to a request for comment at the time of writing. So the thing is, the royal collection doesn't mean that it's not on display. We only have to look at the royal collection in the United Kingdom. And arguably, there are certain things in the royal collection that should go somewhere else, not to anywhere in this country. But they are on display at various different locations. They are, broadly speaking, the possession of the monarchy or / the royal collection. So the institution of monarchy connected to the royal collection owns these things. It doesn't mean they are not on display. It doesn't mean they couldn't be in the equivalent of an Edo State museum. And ultimately, generationally, this is the person who they were looted from. So continuing on this, this is continuing on with the restitution study group. We've talked about this. This is the Deidre Farmer Paleman, who has been arguing that the Benin bronzes should not go back for numerous reasons, including the fact that there is incredible amounts of evidence to point to that the bronze that went into making the Benin bronzes was purchased through the slave trade. And thus, the enslaved people who are resident in places like close to the Met or perhaps close to the British Museum, that actually the Benin bronzes should stay where they are because they are being viewed by the people who were victims of the slave trade that allowed these Benin bronzes to be created in the first place. This article talks about how the Oba of Benin has 5 wives, a $500,000 Rolls Royce, and is trying to get back $30 billion in artworks stolen from his ancestors 135 years ago, including some of the Met's most precious works. I don't love the framing. Either we're repatriating or we're not. I don't like a morality test for the person of the Oba now. I think there are definitely questions to explore in a legal setting about the role of the triangular trade in the creation of them all those years ago. I think, though, the current Oba's behavior and lifestyle is not the way that this should be assessed. It's not a litmus test as to whether or not repatriation should occur. The Oba is a hereditary king of Nigeria. He's already received 3 of the works known as the Benin bronzes from the Met and others from the Smithsonian. But now he is facing an unexpected battle because of these campaigners in New York, who we have talked about. Farmer Paleman says, quote, I think the American DNA descendants have a good moral and legal case. Sorry, William Palestein says, I think the American DNA descendants have a good moral and legal case to share the bronzes, and they are being ignored by the Nigerian and US Museum. Farmer Paleman argues that the Kingdom of Benin, which is different from the modern African country of Benin, because it's in the historical kingdom of Benin is in Nigeria, helped to organize the Atlantic state slave trade. A spokesperson for the Oba said that the treasures, quote, will definitely be made accessible to the public. A 3-story museum designed by architect David Adaje is expected to cost more than $4 million and is scheduled to be completed by 2025. Quote, the king has expressly stated that plans are underway to build the Benin Royal Museum, which will be funded by the federal government of Nigeria, that will house the treasures to educate the Nigerian public about the value and enduring traditions of the Edo people. So maybe it won't be going to the Edo State Museum. Maybe it will be in this Benin Royal Museum, or perhaps they may end up being in some way close to being the same thing. UN representatives are criticising Germany over reparations for colonial crimes in Namibia. UN special reporters have criticised the UN and Namibian governments for violating the rights of Herero and Nama ethnic minorities by excluding them from talks over reparations for colonial crimes against their ancestors. Publishing communication with both governments, 7 UN representatives have urged Germany to take responsibility for all its colonial crimes in Namibia, including mass murder. This, I think, is something that's always needs to be remembered, is that in large, in genocides, in atrocities, that when there is a group that is principally targeted, it's frequently they are not the only group, and this seems to be and that group gets to definitely obviously have a voice, but it should not be at the exclusion of other groups who may be smaller or may have been numerically less affected, getting their say and their voice heard too. Germany has been called on to pay reparations directly to the Herero and Nama and not to the Namibian government. In their letter, the reporters said that Berlin must acknowledge responsibility, quote, for the crimes carried out during its era of colonial rule. Berlin's plans for reconstruction and development programs were insufficient to compensate the victims and their descendants for the, quote, scale of damage that was done to them. This included harm that was suffered as a result of the mass killings, and including starvation, torture, gendered violence, forced labor, and loss of property. They said that development aid as a form of reparation was also in danger of, quote, perpetuating rather than rectifying colonial dynamics. It's a very interesting point to make. I bow to their greater expertise. Karina Thawa, an expert in international law and an advisor to lawyers in Namibia, said it would be necessary to start a new negotiation process. She told the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, quote, "This must be transparent and in compliance with legal minimum standards." In February, Gal Jonas Isaac, who is the chair of the Nama Traditional Leaders Association, told the Guardian, quote, "Reparations would bring back dignity, self-worth, and a meaningful role in our own development and education for the Nama people, so that we can share equally in the resources of Namibia." I don't know what I don't know really what when we say the jurisdiction of the UN, I suppose it all means as much for muchness, doesn't it? It's an excellent question that arguably they should have jurisdiction over the behavior of Germany, at the very least, and I am not sure where. I mean, I don't know what you mean. What we really mean by the jurisdiction of the UN? Do they have the power to arrest? No, I mean, I suppose if being called out by the UN doesn't look good, it's another thing that applies quite a lot of pressure, doesn't it? Um, yeah, I mean, I think the German government probably did decide to do the negotiation the way they were doing it, and the UN has stepped in and gone, nope, 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 that's not the one, and they are now applying that pressure. Um, yeah, that's the. I hate to say that the thing I've always heard is that essentially the UN in lots of fundamental ways is a bit toothless unless somebody wants to really push it. Um, I don't know. I would need I didn't see that in the article. I can go and I can go and see if I can find out, and I will report back in 2 weeks. So we have this article that's based on there was some early discussions about we were told that King Charles III was willing and able and prepared to have the records of the monarchy and his ancestors looked into in terms of their role in the slave trade. I think that the headline, "Direct Ancestors of King Charles Owned Slave Plantations," I cannot be the only person who was not surprised to learn that. I I assumed that would have been the case. I suppose what's mostly surprising is that they've actually, I'll show you in a moment, they have found the particular plantation owners. Um, what's certainly I thought the case when people were like, "Oh, the monarchy profited from the slave trade." I mean, it was called the Royal African Company. The clue is very much in the name, very much in the name. But direct ancestors of King Charles III and the royal family brought and exploited enslaved people on tobacco plantations in Virginia. There was a document discovered in archives that reveals a direct ancestor of the king was involved in buying at least 200 enslaved people from the Royal African Company in 1686. Really interesting is that you can see this document on this article. So if you would like to check it out and you can like zoom in and stuff, this document instructs a ship's captains to deliver enslaved Africans to Edward Porteous, a tobacco plantation owner in Virginia, and two other men. So if we just skip and look at the family tree on the right-hand side, we've got Edward Porteous at the top, and he goes through Roberts, the Porteouses, and then we start to get to recognisably royal names. Bowes Lyon in 1824. because George VI marries Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, that's the Queen Mother. So Charles's grandmother is a descendant of the Bowes-Lyons. Earlier this month, Charles had signalled for the first time his support to research the links between the British monarchy and the transatlantic slave trade. A spokesman for the palace said that Charles took it profoundly seriously and described it as an appalling atrocity. Yes. And that Charles was in the process of deepening his understanding of slavery's enduring impact, which had continued with vigor and determination. So what that's saying is that he's aware it's an issue and he is educating himself about it. So I think that's certainly nothing to be derided, and it could so easily be something that was ignored, but confronting it head on, I'm not going to say it should be applauded, but I think we can, for now, take it in the spirit in which it's meant and see what comes of it. Last week as well, we're told the Bishop of London, Sarah Mullally, issued an apology relating to the same Virginia family, a son of Robert Porteous by a second marriage. A lineage separate from the royal family was Bealby Porteous, interesting name, who was the Bishop of London for 22 years from 1787. And in January, the Felem Palace Trust, which maintains the historic London Bishop's residence, published the research on the Porteous plantation. It acknowledged that Bishop Porteous and a brother inherited their father's large Virginia estate and continued to profit from it as absentee plantation owners and slaves. Mullally marked the opening of a new Felem Palace exhibition on transatlantic slavery and resistance by issuing an apology relating in part to Porteous. Quote, I am profoundly sorry for the harm that was inflicted by my predecessors through their involvement with the transatlantic slave trade. It continues to be a source of great shame to us as a diocese. I think this, I think that statements like this 10, 15 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I think that statements like this would have, particularly from institutions like this, would have been nearly impossible. I can only assume that this is some steps in the right direction. I'm not going to be talking about the coronation on this channel, because I don't do modern monarchy, but I do think that there were some interesting elements in the coronation, and I think also, and I suggest you, if you're interested, I suggest you have a look. Maybe you already know about what the king did to ensure that the chief rabbi would be willing to come and take part, being as it was a Sabbath, and the things that were done and the invitations that were extended to make that possible when driving is not permitted and microphones are not permitted. There is, I think, a sincerity to get it right and to attempt to be sensitive and accommodating that I think comes from a place of genuine feeling, and I just hope that it's something that translates into the firm as a whole and the ruling class as a whole and the political establishment and the two chambers of our parliament, because that then trickles into places like the British Museum. Because let's be very, very clear, the current head of the British Museum is an ex-Conservative politician, and thus we are. I mean, yeah, he's 73 years old and he's reaped the benefits of colonial enslavement his entire life, and now he's deepening his understanding. I think that's an absolutely excellent point. It's an excellent point. And we can say better late than never. But ultimately, certainly I can only speak for myself. It's it's not my place to say whether it's too little, too late, or whether it's better late than never. Well, I think we'll have to see what bricks in the wall this builds to. Meanwhile, the Pope on a plane has talked about the willingness to return indigenous loot. Pope Francis said on Sunday that talks are underway to return colonial era artifacts that are in the Vatican that were acquired from indigenous people in Canada, and has voiced a willingness to return other problematic objects in the Vatican's collection on a case-by-case basis. What I will say to that is we'd have to know what was in the archives, and famously, they are secretive about some of their stuff. Anyway, Francis apparently said, quote, "The seventh commandment comes to mind. If you steal something, you have to give it back." Recently, Francis has returned to Greece 3 fragments of the Parthenon. The Pope said on Sunday that restitution was, quote, "the right gesture." He said, "In the case where you can return things where it's necessary to make a gesture, better to do it. Sometimes you can't. If there are no possibilities, political, real, or concrete possibilities, but in the cases where you can restitute, please do it. It's good for everyone. So don't get used to putting your hands in someone else's pocket. Pockets." His comments to the Associated Press were his first on a question that has forced many museums in Europe and North America to rethink their ethnographic and anthropological collections. The restitution debate has gathered steam amid a reckoning for the colonial conquest of Africa, the Americas, and Asia, and demands for restitution of war loot by the countries and communities of origins. I feel like this one, Matthew Trinker, is spot on, but also it sort of feels like he's walked out the door, pulled the pin on the proverbial grenade and gone, "See ya, bye-bye." Outgoing director of the National Museum of Australia has urged historical institutions to be honest about the frontier wars that marked Australia's colonisation. I completely agree. He said that he would not be seeking reappointment because he felt the organisation needed a refreshment in leadership. Among his achievements, though, was overseeing the return of key Aboriginal artefacts from the British Museum for the first time since they were seized by the crew of Captain James Cook. We talked about that previously. He said it was some of his most challenging work. And to see now a museum in the United Kingdom decide to return some of those spears that were actually shown at the NMA in 2015, to return them permanently, that's a milestone step, not just for the museum, but for the First Nations in this country. He went on and said that the simple and honest truth is that those monuments in the early colonial period, that these moments in the early colonial period were devastating for Aboriginal people. There was a war here on the Australian continent, waged between First Nations and those that have come after in those early decades. There were massacres on the record into the 20th century. So I suppose we'll see what the effect of those words are. I'm sure he meant the best with them, but it does just feel a little bit like, well, I'm going. So be honest. This next one gave me the furious rage. It's not everyone's cup of tea. We're told a 2,800-year-old mummified head from Egypt is for some unimaginable reason being auctioned here in England. This head was taken from Egypt by a British soldier during World War I. So the provenance is super good, and it's going to be hitting the auction block at Swan Fine Art in Oxfordshire on Wednesday. And for some reason, it's expected to fetch up to £20,000 or $250,000. It's been radiocarbon dated, and it suggests that it was this 2,800-year-old head was embalmed sometime between 750 and 800 BCE. An unknown soldier from World War I brought the head home and decided to display it under a glass dome. It soon became clear, however, that the ancient artifact was disturbing his visitors, and so he hid it away in his drawer for the next century. The anonymous consigner who inherited the object said that it's not everyone's cup of tea. He hopes that the head might find a new home in a museum. Do you know how it could do that, babe? It could do that if you gave it to a museum, preferably one in Egypt. Quote, it would be ideal if it could go somewhere it can be studied and appreciated. So don't sell it. So don't sell it. Oh, why? I don't know, Crazy Arch Lady. Not a clue. It makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. So he said he's promised to loan it to a museum if it fails to sell. We are told it's very rare to see an Egyptian mummy head from the ancient world at a public auction. I should blinking well hope so. Particularly a piece with such superb preservation, said Matthew Hole, a specialist at Swan Fine Art. Matthew. It's an absolutely not for me. I should point out that if you do go and check out this article, people are rightly saying this is grim, this is horrible. I agree, fully agree. Just as a heads up, if you do check out this article, be careful when you click it, because it does have a very clear close-up photo of the human remains in question. So they're doing that too. Spectacular work all around. I hate this with a fiery passion. Right. Yes, that's but he didn't say the quiet part out loud. I really want this to go to the museum, but money. The thing that I'm loving, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to update you next week, is that stuff like this, which makes people go, that's a bit, shouldn't be selling that. There are problems reaching guide price. So I hope that we are going to see this not sell. I hope it doesn't get a buyer. That's what I hope. So let's go on to the new news. Let's shake off the sale of human remains. Let's shake it off, and let's talk about fossils, because I could see my pulse. I'm not even messing about. Very rare fossils have been found in Wales. I love this little picture. I think it's adorable. This is apparently one of the world's most important fossil deposits that has been found in mid-Wales. A large number of new fossils have been found near Powys by researchers who had to fundraise to buy the equipment. Museum Wales found the fossils in rocks laid down under the sea more than 46 million years ago. They've got 170 species, including rare soft-bodied animals that were discovered in 2020 on private land known as Castle Bank. This was made by two researchers, Dr. Joseph Botting and Dr. Lucy Muir, who said it was one of the very rare sites where soft tissue and complete organisms are preserved rather than just hard parts like shells and bones. Alberta, thank you very much for that. That's incredibly kind of you and very generous. Thank you so much. Very, very kind. Thank you. The Castle Bank fossils include the youngest known examples of some unusual groups of animals, including something called Opa Benides, which have a vacuum cleaner-like nose, and I love the name of these. Wewaxids, oval-shaped mollusks with a soft underbelly, and a back covered with rows of leaf-shaped scales and long spines. I love this. Dr. Botting said, quote, in some ways, it's a real community effort to reveal this fauna. It wouldn't have been possible to do it without the support of a large number of people. Even most universities do not have the equipment that we were ultimately able to buy. The pair spent more than 100 days in the field collecting the fossils and are working with colleagues in Cardiff, Cambridge, Sweden, and China to examine the fossils. Despite the extraordinary range of fossils already discovered, work has barely begun, Dr. Potting said. Every time we go back, we find something new, and sometimes it's something truly extraordinary. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and this site is going to keep producing new discoveries for decades. So that's lovely. Love it. I got sent this article, I think perhaps the most, and I can very much understand why. This is about ancient DNA that's been recovered from a 25,000-year-old pendant that reveals intriguing details about its wearer. And the drawing there is an artist's reconstruction of how the pendant, may have been worn on a necklace. And they have extracted genetic material, and it's been extracted in a non-invasive manner, applying a pioneering new technique to a pierced deer tooth that was likely worn as a pendant. This research was published in the journal Nature on Wednesday. Before this article was published. This was excavated from the Denisova cave in southern Siberia, and it was worn by a woman who lived between 19,000 and 25,000 years ago, according to the analysis of the human genetic material that was preserved on the pendant. The new method will hopefully allow scientists to learn about the sex and genetic ancestry of the Stone Age makers and wearers and users of an array of bone tools and ornaments that have been unearthed from digs around the world. This is really interesting. So I hadn't spotted that. That's really a good point, that they've made the necklace look like the double helix. That's what they've done. Oh, that's smart. Clever. Good spot, Michelle. Really good spot. That's definitely what they've done. That's so cool. So because they've got this new technology, now they can get this DNA off of, I suppose it's like touch DNA. It's amazing. It means we'll be able to answer very simple questions such as what tasks males and females were doing at this point in time. What are boy jobs and what are girl jobs? They're actually going to have a direct line of evidence to tell them. This technique may also, for example, be able to reveal whether a tool was used by a Neanderthal or our own Homo sapien ancestors. This tech is really cool. Sorry, I think this is really cool. So the human DNA was likely preserved in the deer bone pendant because it's porous and it's therefore more likely to retain genetic material in skin cells, present in skin cells, sweat, and other bodily fluids. Typically, they would use a small drill to extract bone powder from an artifact or bone. This pendant was submerged in a sodium phosphate buffer solution while gradually increasing the temperature. This allowed the DNA to be released into the solution, where it was isolated, purified, and sequenced using existing tools. If we want to stay in this image of the washing machine, it's the wash water that was exciting for us. While bone and tools and artifacts are rarer than stone ones, they're still much more common in the archaeological record than human remains, opening up new avenues for research. So this study, they're saying, is essentially proof of concept, which, yeah, absolutely. So they've tried the test and it works. The technique, at least as it stands, only worked on freshly excavated material and where archaeologists have taken steps to ensure the artifact is clean. So you can't contaminate. So we're going to start seeing archaeological digs that look more and more like crime scenes. And I think or people approaching them in the way people approach crime scenes, which in some ways I think they are doing already. They knew that this stuff was coming down the pike, I reckon. They wear gloves and a mask. They make sure the object is sealed in a bag immediately after being unearthed. Right now, it's like this one sample. I'd be really interested in learning more about how often we can extract ancient human DNA, and if it's a specific type of artifact that's more promising or if it works equally well for bone tools. I think there's going to be issues potentially with the bone tools. Maybe not. It'd be interesting to know if tools were shared, or so. Are they essentially produced by somebody in the community for everyone in the community to use, or do people have their own individual tools? Is there sharing? That would be really interesting to know. It's not known why the deer tooth pendant contains such a large amount of the ancient woman DNA, about the same amount as a human tooth. Perhaps it was well loved and worn close to the skin for an exceptionally long period of time. However, we think the longer that there was close body contact, the higher chances there are that there's going to be a lot of DNA material. We have no idea if we're talking about days, months, years, or decades. Let's see, great comments coming in. Yes, I think in terms of like whether there's boy jobs and girl jobs, I think that there anthropologically there is a belief, and I'm not an anthropologist, but there is a belief that there was a differentiation between those who stayed behind, who typically menstruated, and those who went hunting, circling around the full moon, and those kinds of behaviors. That is the sort of traditional understanding. The interesting thing would be is if you find certain tools which have majoritively what we would understand to be male DNA, or XY chromosomally DNA, and then occasionally not that. Does that mean that there aren't boys and girls jobs, or does that mean that gender norms were not quite as rigid as perhaps they may have been thought to have been? I think it'll be interesting to know those sorts of things. I want to know if there's more than one individual's DNA. I want to know if they have familial connections. I want to know about Neanderthals versus Homo sapiens, etc., etc. I'm keen to see where this stuff goes. An unlikely source of prehistoric food has been identified. According to a statement released by the University of Michigan, they have conducted a study on digester, the undigested vegetal matter found in the stomachs of herbivores, and they have concluded that bison digester may have played an important role in the diet of hunter-gatherers. It's noted that digester from a number of species could have been a source of calories and nutrients such as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Garvey's model showed that a group of 28 adult foragers could consume enough proteins and carbohydrates from one bison's digester to meet the USDA's national nutrition recommendation for 3 days without eating any other food. Quote, failure to account for this underappreciated resource could have important consequences in the studies that address major questions in evolutionary anthropology. Accounting for digester as a source of both kilocalories and carbohydrates leads to predictions that differ from foraging models that do not include this resource. She notes, if hunter-gatherers had access to enough digester, they would have less pressure to forage for fresh plants, and perhaps be able to devote time to other activities instead. So, does that mean this? So they are eating the stomach contents of bisons, the undigested stomach contents of bisons. It's a weird haggis. But that's what we're going to go with, apparently. We have found, I wasn't there. They have found a 6,000-year-old settlement on the island of Corsica. This is an expansive Neolithic site containing 2 distinct settlements. As part of the excavation, archaeologists have uncovered the existence of a recent Neolithic settlement, followed by a late Neolithic settlement. Archaeologists said the first first settlement, which dates back to the early 4th millennium BC, held a stone structure containing the remains of an obsidian napping workshop. I think obsidian is super cool. Talking about the bison digester, it's no weirder than regular haggis. No, it's. I'm just saying that compared, if you were saying I'm not calling it a haggis, I'm saying it's a weird haggis. In the same way that if I was calling tea a weird coffee, they're both hot drinks, and bison digester seems to be packaged in offal like a haggis, in the same way that tea and coffee are both hot drinks, but one is a weird version of the other. I'm not saying that either one of them is weird. They're just weird versions of each other. No judgment for those eating bison digester, or indeed haggis. Within this workshop, there's evidence indicating that ancient people used a variety of methods to make obsidian tools. I love obsidian. According to experts, the site likely experienced significant erosion until the second most recent settlement was built on top of the workshop. Archaeologists unearthed a terrace system filled with occupation and activities in the second, better preserved settlement that dates to the 3rd millennium BCE. The terraces were topped with approximately 3 foot tall or fortified wall made of granite blocks. There's a stone arc made of granite blocks that was located on the first terrace below it. The building methods used in the arc indicated it was used as a roof of some sort. They found a staircase and a corridor inside the terrace building that appeared to serve as a pathway to the system's upper level. They found 2 other similar but more refined terrace systems at this same site. They don't know what these structures are used for. Perhaps for food storage, maybe metallurgy or other artisan activities. They found thousands of unusual copper and other metal artifacts at this site. Some remain indicated that there was traces of melting. There were cattle teeth, unusual cranial skeletal remains that appeared to have been burned. They've unearthed ceramics, flint, obsidian, quartz, arrowheads, polishers, axes, wheels, and tools. Further studies on the finds are ongoing. So it's a workshop. It's a bring this thing in, we'll fix it, we'll make it for you. I mean, I want to know exactly how it worked. How cool. This next one has a picture that made me, it did make me smile, because this little girl, this 8-year-old girl, because I'm gonna flag it up before I show the picture. This 8-year-old girl has picked up this incredible artifact, and I think what her face is saying is, I found this thing and now you won't let me play with it. Because she doesn't look happy. God bless her. She looks really peeved. And you know what? If somebody had taken away my 3,007-year-old flint stone age dagger, I'd probably look a little bit like someone peed on my chips too. So while playing in her schoolyard in Norway, this adorable 8-year-old girl found a lovely small rock, and she then showed her teachers, who realised it wasn't an ordinary stone. The teachers contacted local archaeological authorities. It was identified as a Stone Age dagger, a unique and rare find. So the stone dagger has now been given to the University Museum in Bergen for safekeeping. The release said she does not look. She is livid. The next time that kid finds a Neolithic artifact or a prehistoric blade, you better believe she is going to check under that kid's bed, because she is pocketing everything from now on. She is not showing this ever again. She's livid. Another kid finding artifacts. Why are just yeah? I'm just just like Fagin with a bunch of children, but instead of pickpocketing, you just sending them out to archaeological digs. And it's a good point, Hadrian. They are close to the ground. They are, and they are part borrower. So there's there's that too. Lisa, I don't know how it works in Norway. I don't know what their Treasures Act states. I think mostly she wants the lovely stone back. So I don't. Maybe when she's older, if she did get a fee for it, she'd be happy. But currently, she's like, hang on a minute. I found a really cool stone, and now it's in a museum. Live it. Going to ancient Egypt, we have got a 3,200-year-old tomb with elaborate wall reliefs depicting a deceased couple. This picture, if you get close up to it, it is incredible. It's not doing it justice being in this kind of small a form. Inside this complex, there's a freestanding temple, colonnaded courtyard, underground burial chamber, and 3 chapels testifying to the magnificence of the era. The archaeologists have uncovered intriguing artifacts. One of the most remarkable discoveries in the tomb is a detailed stone relief portraying the dead couple seated opposite a priest named Pi, who was identified through hieroglyphic text. This priest is elaborate in the elaborate stone relief, had a subordinate position to Beccy and oversaw the management of his burial and death cult. Talking about the girl with the stone, maybe they can make a replica for her. That would be lovely. Or I love the idea of little child archaeologists being like magpies, being like, we're going to take away the 3,700-year-old blade, but tiny child, have another shiny instead. And the thing is, if you're giving her a Kinder egg, which is kind of archaeology, you've got to excavate it. It's prohibited in the United States, so you'd have to smuggle it. The Met would love it. That was rude. That was rude. But can you imagine? Is a Kinder egg? Give me the fossil. Give me the artifact, child. I'm just imagining the Met putting up you go into the in my head now. You go into the Met Museum and just into their basement, and they've got smuggled Kinder eggs. This don't look behind the door. So the tombs complex, they have got 4 period chapels, 2 of which have well-maintained wall reliefs illustrating a funeral procession and depiction of the afterlife. This tomb complex was discovered in 2019, and then work into it was then put on hold because of the pandemic. It resumed in December 2022, with the most recent work occurring in the February and March of this year. These archaeological excavations have been centered on Saqqara for more than 100 years, as it became the preferred site of burials for the ancient Egyptian capital of Memphis in around 300 BCE. There is an anticipation that this site is going to divulge further knowledge about life during the early dynastic era to the Greco-Roman epoch. This new archaeological discovery is significant because it sheds light on the development of the Saqqara necropolis during the Ramesside period and provides insight into the lives of ancient Egyptians during this time. The tomb complex is also notable for its impressive architecture, including a freestanding temple, a colonnaded courtyard, and underground burial chambers. The find also highlights the ongoing importance of the Saqqara site as a valuable resource for understanding ancient Egyptian history and culture. So about Kinder eggs. Kinder eggs in the US come with a little spoon. Where's the toy, Michelle? Kinder eggs. Smash the Kinder egg. Take out the plastic. Open it up. Take out the toy. Put bits of the toy up your nose. Lose some other bits. Put a sticker on your eyelid. Boom. That's it. That's your experience with the Kinder egg. You probably eat a bit. If it's got a shoe, it's only ever got one by the end of it. Maybe that's why it's banned in the US. Because kids put things in their ears, up their nose. They eat them. Shouldn't eat them. God, I love a Kinder Egg. Good times. Archaeologists use something called muography to reveal a hidden chamber in Naples. So, we have got Neapolis, a Greek city founded during the 3rd century BCE, whose remains are located around 10 meters beneath the current street level in present-day Naples. This was an important trading centre in Magna Graecia and the Mediterranean, but it's eventually going to be absorbed into the expanding Roman Republic. This study was conducted by the University of Naples in collaboration with the University of Nagoya. The team applied muography. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologise. A technique that uses, and I'm not joking, cosmic ray muons. I'm saying that like I know what any of those. I know what 2 of those words mean in isolation. I don't know what they mean together. Cosmic ray muons to generate 3-dimensional images of volumes. Maths language makes my face hurt. Using information contained in the coulomb, scattering the muons. No, I don't know. Muons are much more deeply penetrating than X-rays. Has everyone heard the term muon before? I feel like reading this article was the first time I'd ever seen that word in my life. Muon tomography can be used to image through much thicker material than X-ray based tomography, such as CT scanning. Several detectors capable of detecting muons were placed underground in the highly populated Sanita district at a depth of 18 meters to measure the muon flux over several weeks. Yvonne, you've heard of muons? No idea what they are. Right. Yes, yes, that is what's what's happening. That is what's happening. That's exactly. Do you know what? Now you say it that way, like I understand. I understand it completely now. Uh, well, don't worry, Dorothy. I will never change because I listen to these words. Right, I listen to them on the Google. I Google it. I'm like, how do I pronounce that? I do it, and then I listen to it, and then I come to do this, and then what I've heard I forget. so it is what we do. Your friend used to work for a marine biology company, and they use something like this to measure depths in craters in the seabed. Right. We're gonna know what muons are. We're gonna hear about it loads. I know we are. Muon is gonna be the new black. That's what it is. You know, forget the little black dress. It's gonna be the little muon dress. I'm telling you. You heard it here first. Cool Vogue. Measurement of the differential flux. Oh, and I am Butterfly. Thank you both for your generous donation, but also for this. Muon scans were used on the SCSN pyramid project that found the. Ooh, is that the creepy void that we looked at before? That I went, I don't like the look of that picture. Is that what? Oh, interesting. Like heavy negative electrons, a subatomic particle according to Google. So it is that one, right? It's the the void that I saw and went, I don't like the look of that. So it found that. Excellent. Right. So this has been tested before. I don't think that article brought up muons, because I would have gone, what does that mean? Like I'm doing now. Right. Carrying on, friends. Right. Measurements of the differential flux in a wide angular range have enabled the researchers to produce a radiographic image. Words are really hard. The Scan Pyramid Project. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Of the upper layers that has revealed known and unknown structures beneath the ground surface. One of those interesting structures is an inaccessible hidden chamber from the Hellenistic period, which, according to researchers, likely contains a burial. Quote, from the number of muons that arrive at the detector from different directions, it's possible to estimate the density of the material they pass through. I feel like if I do the hands, I will know what's going on. We found an excess in the data that could only be explained by the presence of a new burial chamber. I understand what that means. Muon or no muon, they found something cool that they can't get to. How, though? Yep. Yep. I'm not saying I'm pronouncing it right, but how else do you pronounce muon? I mean, I Googled it. I can't remember what they said. Oh, hello. Oh, hang on. My husband's come upstairs.
Okay.
Oh, hello.
Fire a laser at that.
He's showing me a tomato. He's saying,
show you something.
Fire a laser at the tomato. It's going to show me something.
Fire a laser at the tomato. Now you're going to have density of the plate behind it, so your reading will be different at subatomic level.
Fire the laser at that. It will show you a reading, he says. Put the plate behind the tomato. Fire a laser at that. It will show you a different reading because the density will be different.
Yeah, on a subatomic level.
Is it pronounced muon?
Yes.
Oh, I got it right. Thank you. He's gonna have to sit down and do maths with me later. It's the apparently it's mion. I you know what? We're gonna I think I get it. He's gonna fill me in later. No, that sounded gross. He's gonna
Don't ring that bell. I love you. You'll have to decide if you like.
Thank you. He's going to tell me what's happening later, and if I understand it at some point ever, I'll feed back. I mean, he is good. Amanda, don't complicate matters. Is that how ground penetrating radar works? I don't know. I don't know. Monica, preach. Yeah, this my dyslexia. I cannot do my times tables. Nope, can't do them. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why I studied what I studied, because there was less maths involved. Right, we're heading on to not muons. 2,300-year-old scissors have been found in the Celtic grave. I understand scissors. I mean, I personally would call them shears, but we're continuing on. German archaeologists have discovered a spectacular pair of ancient scissors, and they do indeed look spectacular. That they are so well cut, they are so well preserved, they can still cut. This was archaeologists from the Bavarian State Office for the Preservation of Monuments, the BLFD. They were originally called in by a bomb disposal team. Okay. Buried the lead there. At a construction site in Sendling in a suburb of Munich for an unexploded World War II ordnances. This is standard precautionary practice. But in their search, they found a buried wooden structure that turned out to be the cremation tomb dating to the 2nd or 3rd century BCE. This is the period when the Celts would have burnt their dead before burying their remains and possessions in pits. Thusly, there were a range of objects, including a folded sword, which I think we can see there, looking like blimmin', frankly, metal origami. The remains of a shield, the tip of a spear, a razor, and a human fibula. I mean, it's not the party bag I'd want, but you don't always get a choice. The researchers think the sword was heated before it was folded. If not, Hercules. This would have rendered it useless for combat. You don't want to fight with a sword like that. I'm going to tell you that for free. Several explanations as to why this is done. It might have been bent to discourage looters from disturbing the grave. Yes, what use is a bent sword? After all, it's a good point. It may also have served symbolic purposes. The breaking of staffs is quite a famous thing that's done at the death of kings historically in this country. It may have been something that allowed the deceased owner to carry on wielding it in the afterlife. It could also be a precaution against revenants or the rising of the dead. But the star of the show is most certainly the scissors that accompany the objects. They are described as being almost new with a slight sheen. These are multi-purpose tools that could have been used to cut hair or textiles or to shear livestock. In fact, they look exactly like hand shears that I'm going to say that I've seen on farms, but I don't go to farms. I'm afraid of the countryside. But I've seen on television people in farms use shears like that. This has been described as, quote, a special find. I would say so. Because not only do the scissors display impressive craftsmanship, their remarkable preservation also, quote, provides fascinating glimpses into our past. They are around 2,300 years old, but they could still be used today. Fabulous. Oh, do not take the sewings. I tell you what, take someone's pinking shears to paper. They will end you. They will come for you in the still of the night. There's more blades. Carrying on with more blades. We're Roman, and we have got some medical equipment found in Hungary in the burial, they're saying, of a Roman doctor. This is found during a preliminary magnetometer field study. This indicated archaeological features beneath the ground surface. A magnetometer, we are told, is a device that records spatial variation. Oh, this is going to be more stuff that I understand. In the Earth's magnetic field to detect and map magnetic anomalies, artifacts, and features. Metal goes beep beep. It finds it in the ground. Dig it up. This survey led to a discovery of a cemetery from the Avar period and several metal tools deposited in a shallow grave from the 1st century AD, based on a radiocarbon analysis. This placed the burial during a transitional period where parts of present-day Hungary were incorporated into the Roman province of Pannonia. These tools were examined. They were Roman in origin. They were in the burial of a Roman doctor in 2 wooden boxes. In here are things for medical interventions. So we have forceps, needles, tweezers, decorated scalpels made from copper alloy with replaceable blades. Also, evidence of drug residues were identified in the burial, alongside a grinding stone for likely mixing herbs to make medicines. The skeleton has been studied and determined to be a man between the age of 50 and 60 years old. The cause of death being unknown, but there is no sign of trauma or illness. So essentially, he wasn't so bad of a doctor that somebody beat him up. There is a plan to conduct an isotopic analysis of the skeleton to determine whether he was of local origin. Researchers say, quote, only one example of similar medical kit has been discovered from the same period, and it was found in Pompeii. And we all know how that occurred. So this preservation, and they are utterly beautiful objects that hopefully saved lots and lots and lots of lives. We're staying with Rome, And we have got an underwater temple found in Italy. This is an ancient Nabatean temple with marble altars found in the Gulf of Pozzuoli outside Naples in the Italian region of Campania. We quote, the two marble altars of the Roman period, datable to the first half of the 1st century AD, are inserted into the great temple of the Nabateans, now submerged. This population was based in the desert area of the Arabian Peninsula around 2,000 years ago. They established settlement at Pozzuoli, building up the largest commercial port in the Roman Mediterranean area. Quote, this is an extraordinary result and the fruit of the collaboration between peripheral bodies of the Ministry of Culture, the academic and scientific organisations in the region, and the underwater arm of the Carabinieri of Naples. That's the police force. Ancient Puteoli, which is ancient Puzzoli, reveals another of its treasures, whose exact location was unknown up until now. It testifies to the richness and vastness of commercial, cultural, and religious exchanges in the Mediterranean basin in the ancient world. So we have more idea about the layout of the port, its sacred buildings, how this community was in close contact with the warehouses that were storing these traded goods. Quote, these finds bring the total number of Nabatean altar slabs and altar bases found in this area of the sunken city to 5, since the first was discovered in the 18th century. The first 3, 2 bases and 1 slab, are now in the collections of the National Archaeological Museum of Naples and the Archaeological Park of Campi Flegrei at the Castle of Beccy, according to a commentary on the history blog. We have got 3 Roman camps that have been found in Arabia. This, I think, in modern day Jordan. The University of Oxford School of Archaeology made the discovery in a remote sensing survey using satellite imagery. It's evidence of an undocumented military campaign across southeast Jordan into Saudi Arabia. They believe they are almost certain, they say, that this was built by the Roman army. The research team believes it might have been part of a previously undiscovered Roman military campaign linked to the Roman takeover of the Nabatean kingdom in 106 AD. Quote, Roman forts and fortresses show how Rome held a province, but temporary camps, how they acquired it in the first place. Dr. Freidley, one of the team involved, added that the preservation of these camps was remarkable, particularly as they may only have been used for a matter of days or weeks. Archaeologists still need to confirm the date of the camps, though, and they're going to do this through investigation on the ground. These camps were identified by the university's Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa project, and they are later photographed by the Aerial Archaeology in Jordan project. Yes, Nabateans located is the world famous city in Petra, located in Jordan. Yes, it does say so in the article. Absolutely. People invited to take part in a Roman bath excavation in Carlisle. The digging has been taking place at a site near the Carlisle Cricket Club and has uncovered long buried remains, including part of a busy Roman street. This has apparently got international significance, and the site is going to open to the public for 5 weeks. They have found more than 1,000 artifacts, including pottery, weapon, and coins from this site near the club's pavilion, and they have been excavating and finding things since 2021. Quote, uncovering Roman Carlisle will continue to offer opportunities to develop skills and opportunities for the people to get involved and to unlock and celebrate our heritage. The project has already had amazing discoveries of international significance and from this site, and will undoubtedly add to this during May and June. The Carlisle Cricket Club chairman, Mark Raisin, said there is no community archaeology project quite like this, and the discoveries have brought international attention to Carlisle. So he's pleased as punch to be a part of it. I'm loving these stories about community archaeology. It's very interesting. I was sent this a fair few times. I've included it in Roman because it ties and connects to the Roman period, and it's being connected to it. But a Buddha statue has been found in Egypt that points to ancient India links. The 71 centimeter statue is missing part of its right side and its right leg. It's suggested that this find points to there being trade ties between Egypt and India during the Roman era. We are told that this has important implications over the presence of trade ties between these nations during this period. Mr. Waziri said Berenice was one of the largest seaports in Roman-era Egypt and was often the destination for ships from India laden with spices, semi-precious stones, textiles, and ivory. Egypt has unveiled many major archaeological discoveries in recent years. We've certainly covered a lot of them. And it's being positioned as an attempt to revive its tourism industry, because, of course, this is very important to aid and assist the recovery during the COVID pandemic. Quote, however, critics say that a flurry of excavations has prioritised finds that grab media attention over hard academic research. The crown jewel in the government's plans is the long-delayed inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the foot of the pyramids in Giza. We've talked about that museum a whole heck of a lot. I saw images of people in it looking like influencers, reviewers. To my knowledge, no opening date. So I think the museum is built, or at least part of it is, and finished. Maybe not all of it. We are told that the government plans to attract 30 million tourists a year by 2028, which is up from 13 million before the pandemic. And finds like this are going to be really helpful. Interesting points here. So Buddhist missionaries went to Ptolemaic Egypt. I was absolutely not aware of that. It's of course not my period of learning. So thank you for the additional context. I will certainly be looking into that. That's very interesting. And you also point out that these statues are in the Greek style. I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be able to pick in a lineup the difference between Buddhist artwork at this time and how it would be different from the Greek style. Thank you very much, though. We are going to Notre Dame, not together, but we're going to talk about it. A commuter train excavation near Notre Dame Cathedral has uncovered a 2,000-year-old necropolis containing bodies buried with coins in their mouths and apparently an entire pig skeleton. The remains of at least 50 men, women, and children were found in coffins during a dig to expand an existing commuter train line in the former Gallo-Roman town of Lutetia, where the iconic Parisian cathedral stands today. Quote, what's so exceptional about this is we have a window into our past, which is quite rare in this city. We are told in the 2nd century, the living kept their distance from the dead, burying their loved ones in elaborate, sprawling tombs called necropolises, built to honour those who had passed on, but it kept them detached from the cities of the living. Drawing on their funeral rites, we can reach a kind of general vision of the people who lived in Paris in the 2nd century. Quote, at that time, the feeling was there was another life after death, so people placed things in the grave that would help the dead person to survive the afterlife. That's why objects from everyday life have been found, as well as pictures that very likely contained food. The dead were often buried with a coin placed in their coffin or in their mouth. This practice is common in antiquity and it's probably to pay the ferryman of the underworld, Sharon. In one pit, researchers found the skeleton of a whole pig, although they don't know quite why that may have happened. So, although I'm not going to say ritual purposes, perhaps ritual purposes, maybe. We have some stories about the Picts in Scotland. Ancient DNA reveals that the Picts, the quote, painted people of Scotland who fought off the Romans, weren't an enigmatic group that migrated from faraway lands. Instead, the Picts had local roots and were related to other Iron Age people in Britain. They have analysed 8 skeletons from 2 Pictish cemeteries. And it suggests that the Picts did not organise their society around the female bloodline, which is in contradiction to what historians have long supposed and assumed. There is, we are told, a general lack of sources about the Picts and their way of life, which has led to numerous assumptions over the centuries. In the 8th century, during the early medieval period, historians such as the Venerable Bede, who is a fibber, thought that the Picts emigrated from areas around the Aegean Sea or Eastern Europe, and that they traced their descent matrilineally through their mother's side. Archaeologists and historians have begun to tackle the Pictish problem in recent years in an attempt to understand the culture better. It's quite hard to find Pictish remains. They are scarce, but the sandy soils at Loudon Links are more conducive to long-term preservation because they're less acidic than the soil in other areas of Scotland. This suggested to us, the researchers said, that the DNA might also have been preserved, and it prompted further investigation. They were able to extract a nearly complete genome, so a set of a person's genes, from one skeleton from each of the 2 cemeteries. And both of these genomes, when compared with those of other ancient and modern groups from the British Isles, quote, reveals a close genetic affinity to Iron Age populations from Britain. From all 7 Loudon Link skeletons, these are the graveyards in question, they were able to isolate mitochondrial DNA information, which is passed from mother to child, in order for them to look at the assumption about the matrilineality of the Picts. But none of the people whose mitochondrial DNA they analysed shared immediate paternal ancestors, which means they, quote, were unlikely to have been practicing matrilocality. They also found that Pictish genes persist in modern-day people who live in Western Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Northumbria, indicating that even though their culture disappeared, their genes did not. There is additional research on Pictish Scotland that is underway already, and this is according to a statement by the first study's author, who completed the work while at Liverpool John Moores University and is now a postdoctoral researcher at the French National Centre for Scientific Research. And there's going to be an excavation of new sites, chemical analysis, and they're going to be looking into dietary habits, migration, and also further DNA work. So a couple of geniuses decided to not give up treasure in this country. 44 Anglo-Saxon coins were sold on the international market illegally, and they are now helping to reshape historians' understanding of history. 2 men have been convicted of conspiring to sell criminal property in a tangled tale, we're told, that starts back in the 9th century. Collectors, I'm going to use that term loosely, Craig Best and Roger Pilling, we are told, thought they were onto a winner. Reader, they were not. They had in their possession dozens of silver coins, which they knew some were incredibly rare. They decided that they weren't going to follow the law and declare they had found them, and instead they were going to try to sell them. Best hawked what he called big money coins to potentially interested parties, but so rare were some of the items that he was trying to peddle that suspicions grew, and thus they called the police. Best and Pilling have been convicted of this crime. We have this is the latest chapter in a tale that began somewhere in the AD 870s. We talk about Alfred the Great, ruler of Wessex, leading an Anglo-Saxon resistance against Viking invaders. The history pages speak of a contemporary, lesser-known Ceolwulf king of Mercia. He has been painted as a somewhat insignificant player, a Viking puppet. Ceolwulf is described in unflattering terms in Saxon records, and then he vanishes altogether. We know that Alfred the Great withstands the conquest and eventually becomes a ruler of a large part of Ceolwulf's kingdom. But what if this narrative, penned by Alfred's court, is merely just part of the story? This is where two men with metal detectors come into play. We're going to fast forward to 2015. George Powell and Leighton Davies uncover a long-lost stash of 300 coins in a field in Ayr, near Leominster in Herefordshire. They decided not to declare that they had found this. They had they declared it, they could probably have made a lot of money. One expert claims that finders of such hauls become millionaires with no criminal records. Instead, these two geniuses concealed their finds and were jailed in 2019. Well done, boys. Well done. 4 years later, Durham police arrested two men in undercover sting following a lengthy and complex investigation. These are this pair of geniuses, Best and Pilling. Between them, they had 44 of the coins, since valued at £766,000. Unsure of Best had made contact with a US-based coin collector called Professor Ronald Bude, and had tried to interest him in buying some, including what he's calling an Alfred penny. Unsure of the coin's legitimacy, Professor Bude asked Best where they came from because he's a responsible buyer. In an email, Best replied, near Worcester. Worcester is about 30 miles from the scene of the 2015 find. Word swiftly spread about there being these rare coins on the market, and there were and this undercover operation was mounted. Among the coins that the police recovered was an incredibly rare two-headed coins that have images of both Alfred and Ceolwulf. But why are they sharing two sides of the same coin? We go back to the late 9th century. Experts are saying that these coins suggest that these two kings were much more closely aligned than historians have been led to believe. The existence of these coins sheds a whole new light on Alfred's reign and also transforms our understanding of the allegiances of power in this period. These two sets of coins featuring both rulers show that they must have had, quote, a prolonged alliance. Quote, the coins show beyond any possible doubt there was a political and economic alliance between Alfred and Ceolwulf II. Together, these two kings carried out major reform of the coinage, including introducing high-quality silver coins, with the two emperors design symbolizing this alliance. As more coins emerge, it is clear this monetary alliance lasted for some years. This alliance was then airbrushed out of history. These groundbreaking coins are being permanently held at the British Museum, where work is going to continue on unearthing more details about the previously unknown relationship between these two kings. And with the majority of the Viking haul from 2015 yet to be recovered, who knows what other secrets are still out there. Yeah, they think they're going to be able to get away with it, but they aren't as smart or savvy as they think, because when you start playing the Billy Big Bums about I've got these really rare coins, and people will kind of go, hang on a minute, they are really rare coins, because the only people who are prepared to pay the kind of money that these coins can earn know what these coins are, and they also know where those coins should be, namely in a museum. So when they're on the market, people who deal in coins like this are like, hang on, just a diddly minute. Something ain't right here. I'm going to phone the police. A Tableman gaming piece has been discovered in a medieval building. This is in Bedfordshire in England. These excavations were conducted by Cotswold Archaeology because there is going to be a housing development built near Houghton Regis and Dunstable. The team found a medieval timber framed building with a series of medieval enclosure ditches, in addition to the tableman, which was made from a cattle mandible. Tablemen were used to play various board games where two players would typically roll dice and move their pieces across rows of markings. The word tables is derived from Latin tabula, which meant board or plank, and was first introduced into Britain during the Roman period. One of the more popular games played by the Romans was the Ludus Duodenum Scriptorum, which translates as Game of 12 Markings, a game played using 3 cubic dice, each player having 15 pieces. It's likely that the game Tabula was redefined from this and continued to be played into the medieval period. This Tabula is similar to backgammon, and that uses 22 rows of 24 points. This tableman has a diameter of nearly 6 centimeters. I mean, you can see it in somebody's hand for scale. It's. If I'd seen just a picture of the tableman, I'd be like, oh, it's a little backgammon piece. But no, it is massive. And similar examples in both size and decoration have been found at sites across England, which became common during the 11th and 13th century. The excavation team said, quote, "It's not always possible to identify which game the gaming pieces recovered from the archaeological excavation would have belonged to, because there is often no surviving board. However, it's likely, due to the association with the medieval site and the style of decoration and the size, that our gaming piece would have been used to play tabula during the medieval period." So if it's similar to backgammon, this is on a blinking big table. Interesting. I like it. An archaeology project is documenting Yorkshire's lost medieval village. This is a community-led excavation documenting a recently discovered medieval village at High Hunsley in the East Riding of Yorkshire. This is being led by Ethos Heritage in partnership with Humber Timelines, and it's under the direction of Richard Coates and Emma Samuel. This is, I think, starting out from an entry in the Domesday Book, a manuscript record of the Great Survey of much of England and parts of Wales. This village is located 6 miles from the medieval urban centre of Beverley. They have been doing geophysical surveys, and after that began excavating on a suspected house platform in July 2022. They revealed animal bones and teeth and the remains of a dog and pig mandible. There are signs of butchery and burning their evidence, suggesting that the area might have been part of a midden or a yard. 12.7 kgs of pottery was uncovered, consisting of medieval glaze, green glaze, courseware, shell-tempered grey slipware, and shell-tempered and humberware. There are jug handles, thinking that maybe this site might have been a tavern or a pub of some description. They are able, through the finds, to point out that there's been a chronology of activity, that between the 14th and 15th century, this site was heavily occupied, and then in the 16th century, there is a reducing in the activity. There's a variety of metal and other miscellaneous objects, 6 iron knives, window lead, walking tools, copper alloyed personal items, and pieces of jewellery. 150 volunteers took part in the excavation, including university students, enthusiastic amateurs, children from a local special needs school and their families, And part of the project is about educating these student volunteers on how to manage an archaeological site and run a community project, with the main aim of it being focused on using archaeology to aid those who are vulnerable or unemployed or at risk of social exclusion. What a brilliant idea. They're going to continue excavations in the summer of 2023 to reveal further evidence of the building platform, a possible wall, and to examine the relationship between further structures on a site to a holloway. A spokesperson for the project said, quote, "This year will include not just locals, but participants from the USA and Japan. Projects like High Hunsley are a perfect demonstration of how wide the community in community archaeology can be. Not only people from the local area, but also bringing together participants from completely different cultures and time zones, with one commonality being a passion from the past." I'm just having a look back through the... It's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons chat. I'm seeing D&D chat here. As a Church Hill in Selby, Yorkshire, claims to be the birthplace of Henry I of England. So is he the only monarch to be born in the north? Excellent question, Brian. I will investigate on all counts. Thank you. Now then, if at any point I see anybody with a green face and a yellow zoot suit, I am going to have questions. We have an 1800-year-old ritual mask that's been uncovered in the Osaka prefecture. This has been announced by the Osaka Center for Cultural Heritage. This discovery was made during excavations to extend the monorail in Osaka, and the team found this mask. What an incredible thing to survive. It's a wooden mask made from a cedar tree with a representation of a human face. This has survived in the ground for 1800 years. How amazing is that? It's 30 centimeters in height, 18 centimeters wide, and as we can see, it's got eye holes and a mouth, and a perforated hole on one side has survived. Presumably, a string would hold it onto the wearer's face. They think that the mask was used for ritual ceremonies during important agricultural festivals. During this period, Japan transitioned from a settled agricultural society using agricultural methods that were introduced initially in the Kyushu region from Korea. This discovery is the third example of a wooden mask from this period and is similar to another mask found in the Makimuku ruins of the Nara prefecture. The director of the research center said, quote, "I believe the mask represented a spirit of a head, which was believed to be God in the shape of a human and represented the authority of Okimi. The Okimi was the leader of the Yamato kingship, a dominant political coalition comprising of the influential clans based in what is now the Nara prefecture, which held sway from the 3rd to 7th century. Excavations have also revealed a wooden water bucket, a charred hoe-shaped object in flood sediment 2.9 meters beneath the ground surface. This mask is going to go on display at the Museum of Yayoi Culture in Osaka's prefecture, Izumi, between April the 29th and May the 7th. So if anybody is able to go and see that, let us know what you think. What an incredible survivor. That is a good point. And I suppose it depends on the soil it's in. I just think it's amazing when anything that's a material like this, wood, fabric, survives. I always find it amazing. But then maybe that's because lots of the soil in this country can be quite acidic. Oh, bums. May the 7th, that means I am bad at dates. It ended yesterday. Oh, that stinks. In fairness, that's a really short run. April the 29th to May the 7th. Hopefully it will pop up again somewhere else. I'll keep an eye out. Hopefully it's not popping up in anyone's face. That's all I'm going to say. This again, there's no pictures here because it's human remains, but archaeologists in Peru have found an adolescent mummy wrapped in a bundle. It's a 1,000-year-old mummy found on the outskirts of the modern capital. It was the remains of an adolescent found in an underground tomb, wrapped in a funerary bundle and placed there alongside ceramics and rope, including bits of skin and hair. The remains were found in a good state of conservation. While best known for the mountaintop Inca royal retreat of Machu Picchu, Peru was home to various prehispanic cultures that thrived in the centuries before the Inca Empire rose to power. This adolescent lived between 1,100 and 1,200 years ago and might have belonged to the Lima or Ichma cultures. These remains were discovered about 200 meters or 220 yards from where the first mummy of the Kayamakia was found. This was referring to another mummy that was found nearby last year. This is also the site where the remains of 8 children and 12 adults who were apparently sacrificed around 800 to 1,200 years ago were also found. The sprawling Kayamakia complex features the ruins of 4 pyramids and other constructions. The complex is the second largest mud brick city in Peru after Chan Chan in the north of the Andean country. Kayamakia is probably occupied, they think, from people from the coast and the Andean highlands. It's located in a dusty area about 20 kilometers or 12 miles from Lima. The site was once believed to be a thriving trading center. Where is Fotheringay? Yes, we got Northamptonshire. It's also, I don't know if we've talked, but I'm seeing Fotheringay. That relates as well because that is where Mary Queen of Scots is executed too. Hoppity doppity. This is cool. I like this a lot. A 1,000-year-old, look at it, isn't it blimmin' gorgeous? A 1,000-year-old Viking belt buckle has been found in Norway. This was found in a lump of soil during an excavation in 2021. They x-rayed the lump and found these gold and bronze metals. They cleaned the dirt away and found this beautiful piece of jewelry. It's a buckle with these interconnected loops. They think it depicts an animal. Some think it's a lion encircled by serpents. Others think it could be a horse or a dragon. It would have been made with a clay mold, an indication that it might have been mass produced. They don't know who wore it or for what purpose, but they think it dates to roughly 1000 CE. And that it would have been popular among the Vikings of modern-day Norway before the spread of Christianity. Vikings throughout Scandinavia were forced to convert to Christianity around 900 CE when it became the dominant religion in around 1050 CE. While Viking culture was known for including animals in its design, Christians opted for more abstract decoration. Isn't it just beautiful? Hadrian, it looks like a plant to me. There's definitely, see, I can see horse. I can also see plant. I can see vine. I can see boot. I can, I can see musical score. I think it's like a Rorschach test of belt buckles. I think it's absolutely beautiful. A metal detectorist has found a rare 15th century Madonna and Child ring. Another beautiful find. Matthew Hepworth came across this find this golden ring while metal detectoring in a field in Lancaster. He is a 48-year-old nurse from Morecambe, and he's calling it a once-in-a-lifetime find. Well, Matthew, if you find more than one, I think perhaps you might not be nursing anymore, because you clearly have the luck of all anything when it comes to metal detectoring. There's going to be an inquest as to whether it's a treasure, going to be classed as treasure or not. Regardless, he would like it to be in a in a museum. He said that he unearthed the find after hearing a faint sound on his detector, and when he saw it, he was gobsmacked. He informed the finds officer and the Lancaster City Museum. The Loon Valley Detecting Club member said it was a privilege to have salvaged a piece of history from the ground. He said it was his best find yet, beating out other prize discoveries such as a Bronze Age burial site in 2016 and a silver seal depicting a slave. He's got the luck of an 8-year-old girl. Yes, exactly. Who is the other child over her left shoulder? I don't think there is a. I think that might just be Mud. I don't think there is another child on her left shoulder. Well, there's on. So she's holding Christ on her right hand side, on left for us. I can't see anybody in her left shoulder. I'm going to look at it like a magic eye puzzle. An Italian historian claims to have identified the backdrop in the Mona Lisa. A small town in Tuscany is now reveling in excitement after it's claimed that the bridge that's painted in the backdrop of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa belongs to the town. Italian historian Silvano Vincetti said he had no doubt that the Romito de Laterina bridge in the province of Arezzo is what Leonardo had painted into the countryside landscape behind the Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa was painted in Florence in the early 16th century, and the identity of the woman who featured in the oil painting is widely believed to be Lisa del Giocondo, triggered much speculation as the distant background. Theories in the past have identified the bridge as the Ponte Briano, close to Laterina, as well as the Ponte Bobbio in the northern Italian city of Piacenza. Historical documents and drone images have been used to make comparisons between the painting and photographs of the area, and it said that this was an Etruscan Roman bridge, Romito. The most telling detail, he told reporters at the Foreign Press Association in Rome, was the number of arches in the bridge. Leonardo's painting had 4 arches, as does the Romito, whereas the Ponte Briano has 6 and the Ponte Bobbio has more than 6. So we've got a side-by-side here. Only one arch of the Romito, which stretched across the Arno River, remains. Documents belonging to the Medici family that were found in Florence's state archives did show that between 1501 and 1503, this bridge was a very busy, functioning bridge, and that this is at precisely the time that Leonardo, who was in the Valdarno area, first at the service of Cesare Borgia, who was a member of the Borgia family, and then for Piero Soderini, a statesman of the Republic of Florence. This bridge was a shortcut that reduced the journey between Arezzo, Fiesole, and Florence by several hours. The distinctive form of the Arno along that stretch of territory corresponds to what Leonardo portrayed in the landscape to the left of the noblewoman in this famous painting. Vincenti also found documents that attest to Leonardo often residing in Fiesole at the time. He had an uncle who was a priest. Simona Nieri, who is the mayor of Laterina said that Vincenti's theory had caused a lot of excitement in the town of just over 3,500 people. I bet it has, because if this can be proved, you are going to get the amount of people that go and see the Mona Lisa. This is going to be a thing. She said there'll be some rivalry. Simone Nieri said there'll be some rivalry, but we need to put a poster up. She said a cycle path has been developed along part of the Arno that passes by what's left of the Ponte Romito, and that she hoped that the claimed link to the Mona Lisa would bring more tourists to the area. Vincetti has made several other claims about the Mona Lisa in the past, including that Leonardo used a male and female model in the portrait, which hangs behind bulletproof glass in the Louvre, Paris. We've got ancient urine glass flasks for smelling and tasting pee that have been found dumped at Caesar's Forum in Rome. So we have here two archaeological sites. This is a Renaissance era trash dump discovered inside the Forum of Caesar in Rome. So in the Renaissance period, in the late medieval and early modern period, the way of testing your health is the smell, colour, and taste of your urine. Your physician would taste your urine to see what was showing up in your humours as being out of balance. And it seems that what's been found here is things that were used to contain the wee. In fact, one of the symbols of a physician, like the barber has their pole with the red and white, a physician would hold the urine flask aloft. We are told that while the medical dump found at the Forum of Caesar is actually the second example of hygienic disposal practice related to the Obsede de Forno, the little archaeological attention has been directed to other Renaissance era hospital medical contexts. The authors of this study conclude that their study greatly helps their understanding of past practices, quote, while highlighting the need for a more complete overview of the hygiene and disease control regimes of early modern Europe. So what we have here, seemingly, is a hospital waste situation. I wouldn't taste somebody's weed, but, you know, swings and roundabouts. Skipping right along. Oh, it's frozen. I don't know why it's frozen. There we go. So we have a rare sculpture of a Mayan god has been found in the path of a train construction. This has been found. There's a large-scale rail project happening in southern eastern Mexico, and this sculpture of the ancient god Kawil has been found. This the National Institute of Anthropology and History has said so in a release from the April the 27th. We are told that this train project is apparently controversial. It's going to span 965 miles when finished. It's been championed by the Mexican president, but many oppose the endeavour because of fears about environmental destruction and loss of cultural and historical heritage. So this find, we're told, is very important because there are very few sculptural representations of the god Kawil. This is one of the first to appear in Mexican territory. This god has been seen by experts before in paintings in relief, but rarely in 3 dimensions. The Kawil is the Mayan god of lightning, wealth, and fertility, and it's related to the Mayas' idea that lightning fertilized the earth. This statue is one finding among many made by teams salvaging artifacts along the path of the train project. As of April 27th, nearly 490. Nope. As of April 27th, nearly 49,000 buildings or foundations have been catalogued or reserved, over 896,000 pottery fragments, and 491 bones. Whether or not this, I was going to say, derails the train project, I'll stick with it. We wait to see. Now, this is, for me, made me want to cross my legs. 18th century clay tobacco pipes that were used as weapons and surgical tools. I'm unsurprised that they have found evidence of pipes being broken and used for stabbings. I'm a Londoner. I'm not unfamiliar with people being what we call, I don't know if it's a worldwide thing, people being glassed or bottled. What comes to hand comes to hand. So it doesn't surprise me that something that can be made sharp and a bit shanky gets used in that way. Thus, with clay pipes, they can have a really long handle, which will make them like a stiletto blade, essentially. Also, if you're out pipe smoking, you may also be drinking, and where you're drinking, fights happen. In Carnarvonshire in Wales in 1788, we are told a man named Sylvanus Owen was found guilty of manslaughter for striking another man with his right hand. This punch had proved fatal because Owen had 2 pieces of a clay pipe in his hand at the time, one of which entered the man's eye, causing an infection. Also, they found pipes being intentionally used to burn others, and shot in pistols. I mean, I remember that in my misspent youth, when I used to be in nightclubs, the perennial fear was that if you were dancing with a boy, I shouldn't have been dancing with boys, I was too young to be in clubs, but when I was dancing with probably a fully grown man, and I shouldn't have been, the perennial fear was that somebody might get jealous and put their cigarette out on your hand. In fact, I have scars on the back of my hands from people putting cigarettes out on my hands because of that very scenario. So when there was smoking in areas before they banned smoking, this stuff happened all the time. They go on to say that some of the things that made pipes excellent impromptu weapons also made them useful for improvised medical equipment. I mean, that's what I always think. If it can hurt, it can heal. They are readily available, and they've got these long, narrow stems and wide bowls. We have evidence from medical publications such as The Lancet and from surgical guides that suggest that these pipe stems could have been used as catheters. This is where I cross my legs. Like the fighting thing is is the thing that I almost get, but the fact that you would use this to let your wee-wees out, I it's not the one. Yvonne, I have a past, and I also have a tramp stamp tattooed on my back. Like we misspent youth, fully misspent youth. I have a lower back tattoo. Moving on. Pipes were also recommended for emergency tracheotomies, like the biro thing that we all saw on TV, I'm sure. Also, as straws for those who could not eat and drink on their own, and lactation aids for nursing mothers. I'm assuming, Intrepid Frady Cat, the tattoo is, of course, tribal, because I was 50 and did not know any better. So I don't know how you'd use a pipe to help with lactation. The mind, it boggles, but never mind. Both weapons and medical instruments, it's a combination of clay tobacco pipes' properties and availability that makes them ideal improvised tools. There's an obvious and interesting contradiction that one alternative use was to harm or end life, and one was to improve or preserve it, which is, I think, almost everything in life can have too much or too little. I think I don't know how it's a breast pump. I'm not gonna. Apparently, Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, recommended using the steam of a tobacco pipe to remove what's called a guinea worm, which is a waterborne parasite, and apparently you can get it out with the warmth. Maybe it's the warmth might help lactating mothers. Maybe you use the bowl as a kind of warmth if you've got something. I don't know. I when I had my son, I used a breast pump. I can't imagine what function what this would do. But there we go. Oh, Gabriel's already seen the tattoo, and he's asked me what it is, and I go, I made bad choices and let somebody draw on me. So, I mean, yeah, Monica, my thought was mastitis, but I still don't understand how this would help. I don't understand. Maybe we'll get more details in an update. Anyway, next up, we have 19th century news. A museum has renamed a vegetable still life by Van Gogh after a chef spotted something that was off about onions. So it was once called red cabbages and onions, but I can definitely see that it's in fact red cabbages and garlic. I mean, they're definitely bulbs of garlic. We are told that 2 million visitors a year pass through the doors of this museum, and it took an eagle-eyed chef to realise that Vincent van Gogh had actually painted 2 heads of garlic in this still life. Red cabbages and garlic, as it is now known, had been prominently displayed for decades, including as a loan to the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam from 1931 to 1973. But it seems that all that time it's been exhibited under the inaccurate title, which was assigned posthumously by the artist's estate. So this the chef in question reached out to the museum. He made a PowerPoint, we're told, with his wife that showed how Van Gogh painted the garlic, and he did it and compared it to another painting in which he'd done onions. And then he made a video in which he compared different garlic varieties and onions, an overlay drawing of garlic bulbs in the Van Gogh painting to show the lines he actually made, to show the cloves of garlic. And thus they examined his arguments, consulted with a biologist, and finally they agreed. They said, quote, "We constantly monitor our paintings, and it's happened before that a title was changed because something different was depicted than was initially thought." In November, it informed DeWitt, the person who made the PowerPoint, that they would change the name of the painting. The rechristening has been reported in various Dutch news outlets, and I'm sure he's... I mean, I think that's a lovely thing to have seen something new like that. A World War II ship that sunk with more than 1,000 Allied POWs on board has been found. An American submarine torpedoed the Japanese ship in 1942. This ship was the Montevideo Maru. It sunk to the bottom of the South China Sea in 10 minutes. The freighter wasn't marked as prisoner of war transport vessel, and so the Americans didn't realise that Allied prisoners, majority of them Australian, were on board. It's estimated that 1,080 people from 14 countries died when the ship went down, including 979 Australians. It is regarded as Australia's worst maritime disaster. And the ship's final resting point has been a longer mystery. 8 decades after the ship sinking, underwater searchers have finally located the remains of the vessel off the coast of Luzon, which is the largest island in the Philippines. They found the ship more than 13,000 feet below the water's surface. This was a collaborative effort between the Australian Defence Department, the non-profit Silent World Foundation, and Fugro, a Dutch company that specialises in underwater surveys. Searchers located the wreckage after 12 days of searching with an autonomous underwater vehicle equipped with sonar. The officials said they hoped this discovery would help to bring peace to family members who lost loved ones in the wreck 81 years ago. The plan is to leave all the human remains and artifact with the wreckage out of respect for the dead and their families. A new study has helped to... This is new tech. This helped to pinpoint the origin of enslaved Africans. A statement released by the University of California, Santa Cruz team of archaeologists have used predictive modelling to develop a new map of strontium isotope ratios in soils from across the modern-day nation of Angola, where many enslaved Africans originated. Strontium isotope ratios are in the bedrock across the planet, leaving unique signatures in the bones that allow scientists to determine where a person grew up. Using their new isotope map, the team was able to pinpoint the place of origin in Angola of 4 enslaved people whose remains were found in Brazil, St. Martin, and Charleston, South Carolina. Quote, using these archaeological methods is basically the only way of giving these individuals back their own life history, which has remained untold in the historical documents. In the past, archaeologists have often had to eyeball it to say that the isotopes in the human remains generally match what we'd expect to find in a particular region of the world. But with this study, we handed that question over to a predictive model that helped us quantify this in a much more scientific way. So these new technologies and these new methodologies, all of these sorts of things, this is proof of concept that this has been able to happen. They've been able to pinpoint this location. It just means that these kinds of studies can now expand out. We have a modern day team up, a typical archaeological dig. This is Texas archaeologists teaming up with indigenous communities in paint rock excavation. This is the first major excavation at Paint Rock, one of the largest rock art sites in Texas. Dozens of Comanche, Lipan, Apache, Payaya, and Atami tribal members have led the project, and this is in conjunction with professional archaeologists. Quote, the archaeologists wouldn't get to do any interaction with the native communities at this level, where we're actually talking to elders and a good broad spectrum of the native community. We're sharing information with the archaeologists, and the archaeologists are in turn sharing information with us, said Mary Wahihi. Of all the professional scientists working at the site, she's the only one who's both a professional archaeologist and Comanche. She says having native peoples present at indigenous sites is essential to understanding a site's full context. Quote, when an archaeologist sees as a firecrack on a stone or a rock in C2 in the wall, was probably placed there on purpose or for a reason, and they don't know because they never lived that life. The culture is disappearing. We need to develop our own archaeologists and anthropologists and biologists and do our own conservation, our own preservation to our own sites. While Wahihi works at archaeological sites around the southeast, this was a new experience for the majority of the native people present. Many describe feelings of connectedness and healing, including Cynthia Parker. Quote, it's inclusive. Even though we don't know nothing about doing this, it makes you feel so included in something, and that's so important. She is Comanche from Oklahoma. At the dig, we're told she's pushing dirt through a grate for things like shells and animal bones with scraps of flint with her mother and sister, Angela Garza. Quote, there's a connection we get here. It's so peaceful, and we know what we're doing. We know we're doing important work for ourselves, for our families, for our tribes, and it's amazing. Plans for next year's excavation are already in the works. Their archaeologists and any volunteers, Indigenous people, and potentially some Indigenous youth will pick up where this year's crew left off, digging further into the ground to continue uncovering Paint Rock's history. Our final update, we've got another small child finding cool stuff. This 9-year-old boy has found a mammoth fossil in his grandma's backyard. He looks happier about it than the girl who had her blade taken away. When Facebook commenters told him it was a tooth. His name is Jeremiah Longbreak. And this fossil he's found is about 10,000 years old. He said at first he didn't think it was anything special, but he brought it back to his grandma's house to show his mum. When he first brought it to me, I initially thought it was some sort of petrified wood with like quartz running through it. And then I got to look at it and I'm like, well, I've never seen anything like this before. It's really different. There's some bendy areas. It kind of weaves. It's like ribbon candy. So she decided to post the pictures of the object on Facebook, hoping that her rock hound friends, I need rock hound friends, I don't know what they are, but they sound cool, would help to identify it. But it didn't look like wood, they said, but some kind of a weird tooth. Ding, ding, ding. So then Johnson reaches out to a handful of archaeologists and paleontologists, maybe in her just general book, or maybe just email them randomly. And it was identified as an ancient mammoth fossil, a tooth. Johnson said her son was thrilled when he found out. I couldn't keep that thing out of his hands, save for the time he was down the creek looking for more stuff. And this is the stuff, when kids find stuff like this is the archaeologists of the future. This is how you make it. The thought that I could have been walking on a dead mammoth's body, Longbreak told Insider, or a caveman. Longbreak isn't sure what he wants to do with the tooth yet. He says they'll probably keep it for a while and then he might donate it to a museum. But, he said, he definitely won't let his older brother have it. Fair enough, Jeremiah. You found it. You keep it. And again, yes, Manda, just set these kids loose. We need to do a band of marauding child archaeologists. Just off you go. Into the creek with you, child. Down. I mean, they're small. They can fit in little potholy places. Absolutely. That's why he's happy. Nobody's nabbed it off him. Good point. Right, that's the new news. We are moving on to my little statue of the piddling boy. We're moving on to our ding dong news. Oh, quickly. What country? It is in the US. It found it in Oregon. So, on to ding dong. This is an update. The principal who was forced to resign over showing children Michelangelo's David, which is, to me, still feels like a fever dream or an April Fool's joke, has been invited to, or has gone to visit the statue of David that caused all the problems. She went to see Michelangelo's David on Friday at the invitation of the director of the museum, who said that she was grateful for the visit. The principal said that she was impressed by the gallery. Of course, I think it's beautiful. It looks like a church. The thing that impresses me the most is this whole gallery was built for him. There's nothing wrong with the human body in and of itself. Michelangelo would have done him wrong to sculpt him any other way. I think it's wonderful. The educator was asked to resign from the Tallahassee Classical School in Florida after less than a month, last month, after less than a year in the job. Local media reported that Miss Carrasquilla did not know the reason she was asked to leave, but believed that it was related to complaints over the lesson. Any parents that complained over this, you're the problem. Like, for real, you're the problem. Absolutely not. Cannot deal with it. The school later denied that she'd been asked to resign immediately after the complaints and said the board had asked for her resignation after 2 additional unrelated incidents of poor job performance. Give me examples. Because she sounds like a phenomenal teacher to me. So the art lesson was given to 11 and 12-year-olds. 11 and 12-year-olds. Wild. It included an image of the David, and it referenced Michelangelo's creation of Adam painting and Botticelli's Birth of Venus, both of which also contain nudity. These kids all have smartphones. If it's not happening already, in the next few months, their friends are going to be texting them the most depraved stuff for a joke. This is not where the stress should be, friends. It's not where it should be. One parent complained the Renaissance era material was pornographic, and others said they wanted to know about the lesson before it's taught. Do you want to know about geometry? Sharon, do you want to know about that? Do you want to vet the materials? They're going to be reading Dickens' Hard Times. Would you like to read that cover to cover? The incident caused international outcry and confusion in the classical art community. I cannot help but feel that the people who complained about this are underemployed. I'm going to go with underemployed, affluent individuals whose sole remit is either the PTA and or their church group. That's what I think. That if these individuals just worked a 40-hour week, they'd give this much of a about Michelangelo's David. Like these complaints tell me that these people need to get a real job. that's what it tells me. This one is not really history news, but I just need to run it past you all. What is happening? This is not from April the 1st. Everything comes together. A giant phallic iceberg floating. I can hear my husband laughing. Floating in Conception Bay surprises the residents of Dildo, Canada. Is there a Dildo, Newfoundland with a Conception Bay? Because tell me what it's like at once. Because I want to move there. I feel like my son would be happier growing up in Conception Bay, Dildo, Canada. Yes. Thank you, crazy artist lady. I did get sent this more than once. Now look, when those people were saying take the rocks away from the outside of this centre, it looks like a wang. This I think to myself, you know me so well. Yeah, when they were talking about the rocks that looked like a lectern outside that building that looked potentially minor phallic-y, I was like, guys, this thing needs. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if this is off the coast of Florida? They'd be like, alert the Navy! The children cannot possibly see the ice penis, for their minds will be corrupted. We're going down. Yeah, we're absolutely. Everything. I was going to say everything has come together. I'm going to stick with it. Everything has come together so beautifully. Let's just before we move on to events and exhibition, let's just wallow for one single second more in the phallus-shaped iceberg that's been hovering menacingly, attractively, appealingly, erotically, hovering off of the coast of Dildo, Newfoundland, in Conception Bay, and then it sadly collapsed. Look. It was the little engine that could. It was there. It turned up for the photos. It was beautifully fluffed. And then once it had its moment in the sun, it collapsed. It's we've all been there. We've all been there. At least we got the photographs. It wasn't it was the little blue pill. The little blue pill may have run out. I mean, I think for an erection that size, friends, it's a is that what the blue in the water is? Is that what the blue in the water is? Oh dear. Oh, Canada, well done. When it comes to naming things, Canada, MVP. Right, we're going on to events and exhibitions. We have got a new Tudor thing happening. This is Firebrand. It is based on the novel called The Queen's Gambit. That's not the one about the chess. The reason why this is not being called The Queen's Gambit is because Netflix did The Queen's Gambit. That was a different thing. So this is now being called Firebrand. It is being billed as a psychological thriller. This is Alicia Vikander. She is playing the woman herself, Queen Kathryn Parr. We've got Jude Law as King Henry VIII and the luminous, the illustrious Simon Russell Beale is in this. He is playing Gardner. No, maybe. He is going. This is going to be. I think this looks really good. We've only had we don't know a release date yet. We have this production still so far. I am very much enjoying the costumes. I can see the artistic references. The hoods look fabulous. If I'm being finicky, which I'm going to be, the only thing that I'm not loving is that what I can't see at anybody's neckline is the linen undershift. It looks like those gowns are being worn next to the skin. That is my only complaint. Everything else, middle part, beautiful. That amount of hair for this period, also perfect. The English gowns, the fabrics, the jewels, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I would maybe that hood Kathryn Parr is wearing is the same as her underskirt. It looks a little bit lighter, but it's when we have a date for this, I will let you know. Looks fabulous to me. The Static Museum in Berlin has got an exhibition, Archaeological Treasures of Uzbekistan, from Alexander the Great to the Kushan Empire. This is running it's already opened, and it's running until the 14th of January, 2024. Long before Uzbekistan became known through the Silk Road, important centers of culture and power were formed here in ancient times. Oh, hang on. Let me go scroll back. You see a linen shift back right. Oh, maybe just a fragment of one. Everything else is so good. And what we also have is in the front as well, we have the collar of somebody's wearing a high neck, probably English gown. Well, you wouldn't see, as you say, bodies or stays. You'd have your shift, your stays, and then your gown over it. I can't see. Yeah, I can't see the costumes well enough. I think that those shifts should be slightly more obvious. They could be. They could all be wearing bodies. They can be sometimes more flexible. They do look like they're sitting in a little bit of a loose way, but it is possible that they are all wearing bodies. It should show in the way that the gown sits on the body, but I can't see those. This is the only still we have, so it's possible that is happening. We shall see. We shall see. Right. So this is a large-scale exhibition, and it's at 2 sites, and we've got numerous cultural treasures, in addition to archaeological evidence of the Macedonian presence, the unique art of the cushions and the portraits of the aristocratic rulers. It's an interesting way of aristocratic rulers of southern Uzbekistan. It is above all the early Buddhist art that fascinates most. In addition, specially produced videos and computer animations of selected archaeological sites will give visitors an insight into the lively cultural landscape of Uzbekistan from the 4th century BC to the 4th century AD. Now, with this one, So usually if I can find it, I put the accessibility information for these museums. Now on this one, I think it's maybe because it's lost in translation, I couldn't find the accessibility information on this website. But on the next two, the last two, I could. So they are linked both in my description box and also on the Opera pinboard. This looks cool. A new Australian Centre for the Gold Rush collections has opened. And they say it's time to share with you the Australian Centre for Gold Rush collections. In our vaults, we've got tucked away 150,000 objects. When I say museums could give everything back and they would still have so much stuff to fill their shelves, this is proof that you can open a whole new museum that connect us to our amazing story before and after the discovery that changed the game. This is the stuff that will fire imagination and leave you in awe and wonder. We're told this vast collection brings together these objects that tell the stories of this region. It's made diverse people, practices, and ideas. They present stories and objects that connects us to who we are, that preserve culture, identity, and practice, make us laugh, cry, and challenge us. They've got this website's really cool. Check it out. They've got speaking events. They've got all sorts of interesting things, and it's great because there's things about the gold rush, but these items of clothing and clearly things about life in this part of Australia, what looks like things that go inside pubs and clocks and all the rest of it. So yeah, that looks really, if anybody gets a chance to go, because the website looks amazing, the pictures look great. If anybody does get a chance to go, let us know what it's like. And this is now open for the foreseeable. And last, by no means least, we have an exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. It's the title of the exhibition is 1898 US Imperial Visions and Revisions. This is going to be open until February the 25th, 2024. This is to mark the 125th anniversary of the Spanish, American, Cuban, Philippine War. It's a lot of war of 1898. It's the first exhibition to examine this pivotal period through the lens of portraiture and visual culture. This year witnessed the United States become an empire with overseas territories. And by placing portraits of US expansionists in dialogue with portraits of those who dissented, this exhibition revisits this important period of history through multifaceted viewpoints. How fascinating. 90 artworks and collections in Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Guam, Spain, and the US. Illuminates the complications and consequences of the Spanish-American War, the Congressional Joint Resolution to annex Hawaii, and the Philippine-American War. I think this just looks really, really fascinating. So, yes, I think there are some incredible exhibitions that I've just shown there. And I'm very sad that I won't get a chance. I mean, maybe I'll get a chance to go to Australia. I mean, it looks like it's just a new museum that's opened. So maybe I will get a chance to go to Australia to see it, but I don't think I'm going to get a chance to go to the other ones. But if you do let me know what you think. I would be very, very grateful. Well, friends, nearly 3 hours in. That's what happens when we leave it a fortnight. So I'm going to try and talk quicker and do less rambling next time and hopefully be less tired and thus more concise. Thank you all for joining me, whether you are watching live or watching on the playback. Please do make sure that you have subscribed, that you've liked, that you have commented, and also let's pop a social glyph. I'm not going to give you a social glyph to put because apparently it's not just the rude ones. YouTube doesn't like it if I'm specific. So let's, on these ones, whatever news item really caught your attention, think of an emoji that connects to that and let me know that way. It has been fabulous spending this time with you and confessing to some things I don't think I normally confess to. I hope you're all going to have a wonderful Monday. Have much of your Mondays left, and regardless, that you are going to have a lovely week going forward. I will see you for my regular scheduled Friday upload. Hopefully I will make it into the live chat, and I will then see you not next Monday, but the Monday after for another one of these. And yes, if you want to send me news items, my email is a really good place. Otherwise, if you tag me on Twitter, so just at me and tweet at me rather than messaging me, DMing me on there, that would be super amazing. But yes, email is also fabulous. My email is in my about section on YouTube, and also in my link trees and things like that. But just in case you don't know, it is reading the past with Dr. Cat at gmail.com. Right. Thank you all. And I hope that whatever you're doing, you're going to have a great day. And I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.